My best friend of 15 years had been systematically seducing every woman I dated while pretending to console me through each breakup. When I came home early from a trip and found him with my girlfriend on my couch, I discovered he'd been treating my love life like a game for 3 years. What happened next was the perfect revenge that destroyed his entire world while leading me to find true love. My name is Ryan, and I want to tell you how I discovered that my best friend of 15 years had been systematically destroying my relationships and sabotaging my life while pretending to support me, and how I orchestrated the perfect revenge that exposed him to everyone we knew. It all started on a Saturday night in November, when I came home early from what was supposed to be a weekend trip to Denver. I had been dating Emma, a beautiful kindergarten teacher, for 8 months, and this was going to be our first romantic getaway together. But food poisoning from lunch had left me feeling terrible, so I decided to drive back to Phoenix that evening instead of staying another night. Emma had been understanding about cutting the trip short, saying she hoped I felt better soon and that we could reschedule soon. She seemed almost relieved that I was leaving early, which struck me as odd, but I attributed it to not wanting to catch whatever bug I had. I arrived at my apartment around 9 p.m., planning to just crash and recover. But as I was walking up to my front door, I noticed a familiar car parked across the street, my best friend. Kevin's black Honda Civic. Kevin Morrison had been my closest friend since college. We had been roommates for 2 years, been each other's best man at our respective weddings, both of which had ended in divorce, and had supported each other through every major life event for the past 15 years. Kevin was 34. The same age as me, worked as a sales manager at a furniture store, and had always been the more charismatic one between us. He was funny, confident, and had a way of making everyone like him immediately. I had always admired his social skills and relied on his advice about relationships and career decisions. Seeing his car outside my apartment was unusual, since he hadn't mentioned coming over, but Kevin often dropped by unannounced, so I didn't think much of it initially. What I saw when I quietly entered my apartment changed everything. Kevin was sitting on my couch with Emma, and they were much closer than any casual visit would warrant. Emma was wearing a red dress I had never seen before, and Kevin had his arm around her shoulders. They were drinking wine from my good glasses and laughing intimately. I stood frozen in my entryway, watching through the gap between the kitchen and living room. This wasn't a coincidental meeting or an innocent visit. This was clearly a planned romantic encounter. "I feel bad about lying to Ryan," I heard Emma say. "You don't need to feel guilty," Kevin replied smoothly. "Ryan's a good guy, but he's not right for you. He's too serious, too focused on work. You deserve someone who knows how to have fun. But he's been so sweet to me, and he really cares about me." That's exactly the problem. He cares too much, too fast. It's suffocating. You said yourself that he's already talking about moving in together after only 8 months. To ice. I had mentioned to Kevin just 2 weeks earlier that I was thinking about asking Emma to move in with me. I had asked for his advice about the timing, and he had encouraged me to wait a few more months. "You're probably right," Emma said. "Sometimes I feel like he's more invested in this relationship than I am. That's because you're not compatible. You're spontaneous and fun-loving. Ryan plans everything 3 weeks in advance. You need someone who can keep up with your energy." As I listened to Kevin systematically undermine my relationship while seducing my girlfriend, I realized this wasn't a spontaneous betrayal. This was calculated and deliberate. I quietly backed out of the apartment and sat in my car for 2 hours, trying to process what I had witnessed. Part of me wanted to burst back in and confront them immediately, but a cooler part of my mind was already working on a different plan. When I finally returned to the apartment, Kevin's car was gone, and Emma had left as well. I called her phone. "Babe, how are you feeling?" she answered. "Better, thanks." "Where are you?" "Just at home, getting ready for bed. Long day?" The ease with which she lied was shocking. "Did you do anything interesting tonight?" "Not really. Just watched some Netflix and ordered takeout. It's a pretty boring evening." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment trying to understand what had just happened. My best friend was sleeping with my girlfriend, and they were both lying to my face about it. But as I thought about it more, I began to remember other strange patterns in my recent relationships. My previous girlfriend, Sarah, had broken up with me 6 months ago, saying she needed space to figure things out. But just 2 weeks after our breakup, I had heard through mutual friends that she was dating someone new. I never found out who. Before Sarah, there was Jessica, who had ended things after 4 months, claiming we weren't compatible. She said I was too predictable and needed someone with more spontaneity. Before Jessica was Amanda, who had broken up with me after saying I was too clingy and moved too fast in relationships. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Kevin had been intimately involved in all of these relationships. He had met all of my girlfriends, had given me advice about each relationship, and had been my confidant when each one ended. The next morning, I called in sick to work, drove to see my friend Marcus, who worked as a private investigator. Marcus had helped me with a different matter a few years earlier, and I trusted his discretion. "I need you to investigate my best friend Kevin Morrison," I told him, explaining what I had witnessed. "That's rough, man. How deep do you want me to go? I want to know everything. How long this has been going on, whether he's done this before, and what his real motivations are. This could get expensive, and what we find might be worse than you expect. I don't care. I need to know the truth." Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus conducted a thorough investigation into Kevin's activities and history. What he discovered was far more extensive and malicious than I had imagined. Kevin hadn't just been having an affair with Emma. He had been systematically seducing and stealing every woman I had dated for the past 3 years. Marcus obtained phone records and social media data that showed Kevin had been in contact with Sarah, Jessica, and Amanda throughout my relationships with each of them. He had been meeting them secretly, gradually winning their trust, and then seducing them. Away from me, the pattern was always the same. Kevin would befriend my girlfriend under the guise of being my loyal best friend. He would listen to their complaints about our relationship, offer sympathy and understanding, and gradually position himself as the more desirable alternative. But the most devastating discovery was a group chat Kevin had been maintaining with his other friends, documenting his systematic destruction of my love life. Messages from the group chat. "Operation Steal Ryan's girlfriend is going perfectly. Emma is already complaining about how boring he is. Dude, how many does that make now? This will be number 4 in 3 years. Ryan never learns. Kevin, why do you keep doing this to him? 'Cause it's easy and it's fun? Ryan has terrible taste in women, but he's good at finding them. I just wait for him to do the work of getting them interested, then I swoop in and take them. Kevin, don't you feel bad about it? Why should I? Ryan's always been the golden boy. Good job, nice apartment, family money. He's had everything handed to him. This is just evening the score." Reading those messages felt like being punched in the stomach. The man I had considered my closest friend had been treating my romantic life like a game, systematically destroying my relationships out of jealousy and entertainment. But the message that truly enraged me was one Kevin had sent just the day before. "Emma is almost ready to dump Ryan. I told her he was planning to ask her to move in together, which freaked her out. Should have this wrapped up by next weekend. Ryan will be heartbroken, and I'll be there to console Emma. Same playbook, same results." Kevin Marcus also discovered that Kevin had been spreading rumors about me in our social circle, subtly undermining my reputation while positioning himself as the more reliable friend. He had been telling people that I was emotionally unstable after my divorce, that I was desperate for a relationship, and that my girlfriends always left me because I was clingy and controlling. Armed with this devastating evidence, I decided that Kevin needed to face consequences that matched the scope of his betrayal. Instead of confronting him directly, I planned something more comprehensive. I organized what I told everyone was a surprise birthday party for Kevin, even though his birthday was still 2 months away. I invited everyone in our social circle, all our mutual friends, several of my ex-girlfriends, including Sarah, Jessica, and Amanda, and Emma. I told each person individually that Kevin had been going through a tough time and that I wanted to do something special to cheer him up. Everyone agreed to come, thinking they were supporting Kevin during a difficult period. The party was scheduled for a Saturday evening at my apartment. I had prepared a presentation that I told people was a tribute video celebrating Kevin's friendship over the years. When everyone arrived, Kevin seemed genuinely touched by what he believed was a surprise party organized by his devoted best friend. Ryan, this is amazing, man. You didn't have to do all this. Actually, Kevin, I did have to do this. Everyone deserves to know who you really are. I connected my laptop to the TV and began my presentation. Thank you all for coming tonight. Here, because you all know Kevin Morrison, and you think he's a good friend and a trustworthy person. I thought the same thing until 2 weeks ago. I started with the screenshots of Kevin's group chat messages, showing his bragging about systematically seducing my girlfriends, and his plan to steal Emma. The room went completely silent as people read Kevin's messages about treating my relationships like a game. Kevin has been destroying my romantic life for 3 years, not because he cared about these women, but because he enjoyed the challenge of taking something that belonged to me. I showed the timeline of how Kevin had contacted each of my ex-girlfriends, documenting his pattern of befriending them, undermining my relationships, and then seducing them. Sarah, Jessica, and Amanda were all sitting in stunned silence, realizing they had been manipulated and used as pawns in Kevin's game. But Kevin's betrayal goes beyond just my romantic relationships. He's been spreading rumors about me, calling me emotionally unstable and clingy. While positioning himself as the more reliable friend, I showed more messages where Kevin had mocked my personality, my career, and my family to our mutual friends. Emma, I said, turning to face her directly. Kevin told you I was planning to ask you to move in together because he wanted to scare you away from me? He's been manipulating your feelings and your perceptions of our relationship from the beginning. Emma's face was pale. She was staring at Kevin with a mixture of horror and disgust. Kevin had been sitting frozen during my presentation. Now he tried to defend himself. Ryan, this is all taken out of context. You're making it sound worse than it is. Which part is out of context, Kevin? The part where you bragged about stealing my girlfriends? Or the part where you called me emotionally unstable to our friends? I never meant to hurt you, I thought these women weren't right for you. So you decided to sleep with all of them to prove your point? The room erupted in disgusted murmurs and angry comments from our friends. Several people got up and left immediately, wanting nothing more to do with Kevin. Sarah walked up to Kevin, her face red with anger. You told me Ryan was controlling and possessive. You made me think he was the problem in our relationship, but you were manipulating me the entire time. Jessica chimed in next. You said Ryan was boring and predictable, and that I deserved someone more exciting. I believed you because I thought you were his friend and knew him well. Amanda was the angriest. You made me think I was crazy. Having feelings for Ryan, you convinced me that we were incompatible and that I should trust your judgment as his best friend. Emma just stared at Kevin with tears in her eyes. I can't believe I let you manipulate me like this. I actually cared about Ryan, and you made me think there was something wrong with our relationship. Kevin tried to leave, but several of our friends blocked his path. Not so fast, Kevin, said our mutual friend Derek. We all deserve to know what other lies you've been telling about us. What followed was a brutal 2-hour session where everyone in the room confronted Kevin about his manipulative behavior. It turned out that Kevin had been spreading rumors and creating drama in multiple relationships within our social circle, always positioning himself as the trustworthy friend while undermining others. By the end of the evening, Kevin had lost every friend in the room. People were canceling plans with him, removing him from group chats, making it clear that he was no longer welcome in our social circle. But I wasn't finished. The next week, I sent copies of Kevin's messages to his workplace HR department. His behavior toward women and his admission to systematically manipulating relationships raised serious questions about his conduct with female colleagues. Kevin was fired 3 days later after HR investigated and found multiple complaints from female coworkers about his inappropriate behavior that hadn't been reported before. I also sent the evidence to Kevin's ex-wife, who was considering allowing him increased visitation with their 2 young children. After seeing proof of his manipulative and predatory behavior toward women, she filed for a modification of their custody agreement to limit his access to their kids. The aftermath was swift and complete. Within a month, Kevin had lost his job, most of his custody rights, his entire social circle, and his reputation in our community. But the most satisfying part wasn't Kevin's downfall. It was the restoration of my own relationships and self-confidence. Emma and I had a long conversation after the party, and she apologized profusely for being manipulated by Kevin. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. Genuinely cared about you, but Kevin made me doubt my own feelings. He convinced me that you were moving too fast and that I should be more cautious. Why didn't you just talk to me about your concerns? Because Kevin made it seem like talking to you about it would make things worse. He said you were the type. A person who couldn't handle criticism or feedback in relationships. Emma and I tried to rebuild our relationship, but the trust had been damaged too severely. We parted ways amicably, with her understanding that Kevin's manipulation had poisoned something that might have been really good. But 6 months later, I met Dr. Lisa Chen, a veterinarian who had heard about my story through mutual friends. Lisa was impressed by how I had handled the situation, exposing Kevin's behavior rather than just walking away quietly. Most people would have just cut ties and moved on, Lisa told me over our first dinner. It took real courage to make sure there were consequences for his actions, and that other people knew what kind of person he really was. Lisa and I connected immediately over our shared values of honesty and loyalty. She had been through her own betrayal by a former friend and understood the importance of surrounding yourself with trustworthy people. 2 years later, Lisa and I got married, surrounded by friends who had proven their loyalty and honesty. The contrast with my previous relationships was striking. This time, I had a partner who communicated directly with me instead of being manipulated by outside influences. The most perfect moment came 3 years after Kevin's exposure when I ran into him at a grocery store. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, and clearly struggling. "Ryan," he said nervously when he saw me. "How are you?" "I'm doing extremely well, Kevin. How are things with you?" We're challenging. I'm still looking for work, and it's been hard to rebuild my social life." "I'm sure it has been." "Got married last year, by the way. Lisa's wonderful, honest, loyal, everything I was looking for in a partner." Kevin's face fell. "That's great, man. I'm happy for you. It's amazing how much happiness you can find when you surround yourself with people who actually care about you instead of people who see you as a target to manipulate." As I walked away from that encounter, I reflected on how perfectly justice had been served. Kevin had thought he was so clever, systematically destroying my relationships while maintaining the facade of being my loyal friend. He had believed he could take whatever he wanted from my life without consequences. Instead, his betrayal had ultimately led me to find genuine love with someone who valued honesty and loyalty. The exposure of his manipulative behavior had also protected other people from being victimized by his games. Today, as I watch Lisa play with our new puppy in our backyard, I sometimes think about the 3 years spent unknowingly competing against my own best friend for the affection of women I cared about. But I don't regret those years anymore. They taught me to pay attention to patterns in my relationships, to trust my instincts when something seems off, and to value direct communication over manipulation. Kevin is still in Phoenix, working odd jobs and living alone, still trying to rebuild a life that he destroyed through his own choices. The social circle that once welcomed him wants nothing to do with him. As for me, I found everything I was looking for in both friendship and love. Real loyalty doesn't require deception or competition. It's honest, supportive, and grows stronger through trust rather than weakening through betrayal. The friend who thought he could systematically steal my girlfriends while pretending to support me ended up losing everything he actually valued. And I couldn't be more grateful for the lesson he taught me about recognizing authentic relationships. Sometimes the deepest betrayal leads to the most important growth. Kevin's manipulation freed me to find people who actually deserved my trust and loyalty.